One popular verse for the Trinity proof text is John 20:28. And I turn to Terry's point to Thomas's statement, "My Lord, my God," in John 20:28. Now let's look at the context. The other disciples, starting verse 25, going back to verse 25, the other disciples therefore said unto him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said unto them, "Except I see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe." And after 8 days again, the disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, "Peace be unto you." Then saith he to Thomas, "Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands. Reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing." And Thomas answered and said unto him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus saith unto him, "Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed." And many other signs truly did Jesus in presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that ye might know that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and believing ye might have life through his name. The context is the belief that Jesus is alive. The context is not that Jesus is God. That's not the context. It even says so in verse 31, or in the previous verses. And the passage concludes with the declaration that is written so that people would know that Jesus is the Christ, not that he is God. You'd think that would be a much bigger revelation, but it's not, apparently. When we think that, if Thomas was declaring Jesus to be God in the flesh, then that would be the most important thing. Instead, the writer of John says a few verses later that this is written to convince people that Jesus is the Messiah. So does Thomas's declaration actually mean that Jesus is God? There are many other reasons to doubt that, aside from just looking at the context. First, in the Old Testament, God's human and angelic representatives often referred to as God. You look at these texts up yourself if you want. Jesus, being a recently resurrected Messiah, which Messiah means anointed one, certainly fits this category. He certainly fits the category of being a representative of God. Therefore, it would not be inappropriate from an Old Testament mindset to use the word God when referring to him. That's something that 21st century Christians have a very hard time grasping. In the Old Testament was very strictly monotheistic, where there was only one being that was actually God, but representatives could be referred to as God. Second, Thomas did not say, "My Lord, my God." That's just the way it's translated, but that's not what he actually said. The original Greek records him as saying, "Hakurios moi kai hotheos mu." Sorry, Hakurios moi kai hotheos mu. The Lord of me and the God of me. That's the most literal translation of it. Not "my Lord and my God." The Lord of me and the God of me. It seems to indicate that Thomas was speaking of two persons and was acknowledging something that Jesus taught. John 12:40-45, 44 and 45. And Jesus cried out and said, "Whoever believes in me believes not in me, but him who sent me. And whoever sees me sees him who sent me." So Thomas would be saying, acknowledging that he sees one who sent Jesus, or he's saying, acknowledging that he sees Jesus and the one who sent Jesus. Third, this passage seems to echo an expression found in the Old Testament. 1 Samuel 20:12. And Jonathan said unto David, "O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow any time on the third day, and behold, if there be good toward David, and I then send unto thee and show it to thee." Jonathan said unto David, "O Lord God of Israel." Seems a little strange to us, doesn't it? Some translations add, bear witness after God of Israel, making it, O Lord God of Israel, bear witness. But that's not in the original Hebrew. In this case, the King James actually sticks closer to the original Hebrew than a lot of the newer translations. The original Hebrew just simply has it saying, Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father. This passage sounds like it's Jonathan's calling David God, just as Thomas appears to be calling Jesus God. He's using very similar phrasing. Again, Thomas is coming from an Old Testament mindset. He grew up on the Old Testament. This is, if you want to understand the New Testament, you need to understand the Old Testament first. That's the perspective you need to approach the New Testament with. However, we clearly understand that Jonathan is addressing both David and God in the same sentence. Could this be what Thomas is doing? You need to not just get this knee-jerk reaction where God appears and referenced in first was Jesus, therefore Jesus must be God. You need to look at the context, not only of the immediate verses, and not only of the New Testament, but also the context of the Old Testament. So could this be what Thomas is doing? I think it's much more likely, considering the context of the immediate verses, context in the New Testament, and the context of the Old Testament mindset.